Hello and welcome back to Ray's Gaming and more Wilds Talk. Today we're going to discuss the weapons and the incoming rebalance of them. Yes, if you didn't know, there was a surprising director's letter from the man himself, Yuya, but not just that, there's also a literal balance update that hit with Title Update 1. They dropped the Title Update 1 patch notes today, and in that there were some small changes to the weapons that we'll quickly reference and run through now. Lance has some improvements to its focus strike, so it can actually reach after its focus strike. There was some awkwardness with the focus strike of hammer as well. You couldn't actually use them after moving during a charge, at least briefly. Light Bowgun had some sort of issue with the palico attacks and wyvern blast. And Hunting Horn had an important one fixed where the inputs weren't working correctly. I'll reference that again later in the video. This may in fact be that. They've also seemingly addressed the whole ranged attack gameplay of the bowguns when on the back of the seikret. It doesn't really say exactly what's happened, it just says has been adjusted, but I could expect that to be nerfed a little bit. They've also referenced the fact that corrupted mantle was going to be addressed. Here they said it's been adjusted. This is really bad in my opinion because they haven't told us what they've actually done, so we have to work it out ourselves. I don't appreciate really vague patch notes like this, but it's kind of what I expected at the same time. They've reduced the damage you take while wearing Rocksteady Mantle, and the duration of Evasion Mantle and Mending Mantle, that's up, that's nice. Something totally weird is the bow, the Dragon Piercer damage has been decreased, which feels completely unnecessary, but on the other hand, they buffed the Power Volley elemental values, and 1000 Dragon damage has also been increased, which seemingly was underused. Also, Power Shot and Power Volley are now affected by the skill Charge Master. So right now it seems like Dragon Piercer took a hit and a few other things were buffed, but will it be enough? As I'll talk about later, it feels they over-adjusted from the beta to launch, so maybe more updates like this will be seen. But that's the title update weapon changes. Let's now go back to the director's letter and what was said there. In that, he talked about a few important topics, and one of them was weapon rebalance. It was stated that these changes would be gradually implemented with each title update to hopefully make the game enjoyable for a longer time. The thing is, this might even happen in the May update that this director's letter revealed is happening. In no uncertain terms, Tukura explained that unintentionally overpowered things will be adjusted downwards while they at the same time adjust other parts upwards to make a balanced update. We saw that in the beta bow to launch version where they nerfed the power of tracer arrows and fast focus mode aiming while buffing things like the normal arrow shot damage. But he also mentioned upwards adjustments, like the hammer, but said these things will take careful consideration and time. So the big question is, what actually needs buffs? How will they be buffed? What are the nerfs apparently going to be? How will that go? Let's talk about it. For the two weapons that clearly need buffs, and I don't think it's up for much debate, it's Hunting Horn and Hammer. Now Hunting Horn is one that I don't think is up for a lot of debate because of its average placement when you look at speedrun times on the hardest monsters at the moment. Looking at the situation for 4 weeks total, I've seen that Hunting Horn has remained the slowest clearer by a noticeable amount. To give you a vague example, imagine most weapons kill something in 3 minutes or less, the best weapons are in 2 minutes or even towards 1 minute. Meanwhile, Hunting Horn would be about 4 minutes or so in that example. Everything else is kind of closer to one another, but Hunting Horn is noticeably behind in a stark way. So my assessment of that comes down to output. It simply doesn't have great output right now compared to the other weapons. But that's not to say the Hunting Horn feels bad to play. I spoke with Zach aka Cotton about this since he's a big Hunting Horn fan and covers the weapon here on the channel for us. I let him know about the situation with the average rankings and asked him what he thinks the core issues could be and what might help. And he gave me some fair issues outside of just, buff the damage. Firstly, the surprising fact, at least to me as a non-Hunting Horn player, right, is that the sound wave stuff, those attacks don't crit. So that forces you to use elemental weapons. I think about the most popular Hunting Horns and my mind goes straight to say arkveld and that being a dragon related Hunting Horn. But either way, it's a fact that element weapons aren't doing the best in base wilds right now due to tier 3 monsters that we have not having very good element hit zones. You can fight against that fact with artian weapons that have heavy element reinforcement if you get the usual and meta 4 element boost setup. There you'd end up with a weapon with really high element and that can help counteract the lower hit zones. But Hunting Horn isn't able to do that. Artian weapons aren't really used for Hunting Horn because of the all-important melody list. The hunting horns are forced to pick weapons based on what melody options the weapon has built in, and that means the arkveld one is a good choice thanks to its various good melody options like sharpness management or extending the duration of your buff songs. There's even a cool trick you can do with Gore's hunting horn to play the affinity boost song, then you swap to arkveld and then not lose the buff. Meanwhile, it seems the artian hunting horn melody options just don't work and you don't have the control over what melodies it has like you kind of need to. So that forces hunting horn players into the monster weapons, that seems to force them into element setups, and we're in a meta where raw and status artian is so good. Zach suggested that freeing up the melody lists to allow for more personal customization would let you pick and choose a stronger, more meta setup for that purpose. That could help the output. That could be done with the artian weapons, in theory. Zach also mentioned that there are some awkward bugs with the weapon, like input issues during your echo bubble and focus strike, where you're setting up the free notes to fast register melodies, but sometimes the triangle and circle or double note, that doesn't register properly at those times, so that could be helpful to fix. So yeah, these things, and maybe a general damage buff of some kind, would be the thing it needs. But then we have the other weapon that's definitely getting upwards adjustments, and that's hammer. It turns out that while it's true that it's been a bit low on the rankings, the devs are absolutely certain that they want to address hammer. In the director's letter, it was made very clear by Tukada that hammer is the first named upward adjustment weapon. And also, it's only going to be after they're happy with hammer that they're going to look at overall weapon balance, either in that end of May update or maybe during title update 2. But what does hammer actually need? Well, again, I spoke with Zach, aka Cotton, about this. He's also a hammer main. One attack that feels really good right now is obviously the new mighty charge. It hits hard and it can be used in many ways, even as part of a combo, like how you can swap into it at the end of a big bang combo. Now in the beta, it did seem like it was performing too well relative to true charge slash of the greatsword, which was buffed. And personally, I think it's fine for there to be some sort of competition for the biggest wake up hit. And right now, mighty charge does seem to be a large part of hammer's DPS. So Zach thinks it'd be nice to change around the weapon's output, to make other attacks more relevant, spread the DPS out a bit more. And he also suggested the idea of hammer being the first weapon to have 2 offsets instead of 1. So you could have the usual golf swing style upswing at the end of the triangle combo or say out of a bludgeoning spin, but then as a different attack to also have an offset, what about one that's easier to pull out? Zach suggested the upswing of the second level charge attack, the one that's used to move you forward with its momentum and also lets you reach a bit higher. So I really like the idea of being able to pull that out and using it in a kind of counter way. For mighty charge though, I suggested that they could improve its damage like they did with switch axe and full release, or they could make it hit harder in some kind of context. Like after performing the big bang combo at part 4, you interrupt part 5 and instead do a mighty charge. Maybe if you combo into mighty charge from big bang 4, that gives you an extra powerful hit or something like that. This would be cool because it would also encourage the use of Big Bang. But Zach did suggest that the motion values of your other attacks could really benefit from damage buffs, and I'd agree with that. I'll be interested to see what it is they actually do. But yeah, that's it for the weapons I feel will get upwards improvements. I'd argue there's also a chance for bow, just to mention it. In the average rankings, bow has been falling around the 11th place area pretty consistently, unless you're looking at speedruns using heroics, where yeah, it's got way more relevant output and impressive times. The problem is that your average player isn't using heroics. They don't want to have to set their health up to very low, then sit there at low health, perfectly playing, never getting hit a single time. It's unreasonable to ask. Without that, bow is certainly on the lower end, as we've seen. So maybe they overdid it with the changes from beta to launch, but I'm not exactly convinced they see it that way just yet. But hey, I figured I'd at least mention it. But on the other end of things, let's not forget that side of it. Tukada did right that some unintentional overpowered things are going to be adjusted downwards, but at the same time, they'll adjust other parts upwards as a generally balanced update. So again, bow was the example of that from the beta. They nerfed trace arrow and the fast focus aiming, but did buff other things like normal arrow damage. So what weapons could we think of that are overperforming while also benefiting from one specific attack or aspect that is the reason for that? Well, there's a few that I want to highlight. Firstly, longsword. The new meta at the moment is using Crimson Slash 1 into Spirit Blade 1 and then repeating that over and over and over. There's a new Crimson Slash combo, part 1, 2, and 3, that's unlocked when you reach red gauge with longsword. It's really cool. The problem is that Crimson Slash 1 is so good, Crimson Slash 2 is not very good, Crimson Slash 3 is very good. But you know, Spirit Blade 1 is pretty decent. So you can get the double hit of Crimson Slash 1, interrupt it with Spirit Blade 1, which is a multi-hit, and then go back to Crimson Slash 1 super quick, allowing you to maximize a really high DPS start up of a combo and just infinitely loop it. I do find it quite satisfying and different for longsword in general. I like that longsword for once is allowing you to be more aggressive with the basic attacks instead of just being a counter machine and then helm spam. But there are plenty of people that miss that playstyle as it's what they enjoy about longsword, and right now it's definitely overtuned towards this Crimson Slash spam thing. So if they were to address longsword, that's what I would hope they would do. I would hope that they would somehow reduce the effect of Crimson Slash 1, or maybe even encourage Crimson Slash 2 and 3 a lot more. I would hope that they would improve the output of Helmbreaker and especially the full release combo to make it worth de-leveling yourself and thereby losing the red gauge options. I think longsword's in a great place right now. I find it very fun, but that's the biggest criticism I see, that the Crimson Slash combo takes away from the rest of the kit, forcing you to use it. So they could nerf that and bring other stuff up. Next is a clear top performer that definitely has something that's a bit crazy right now. It's Glaive, which is performing incredibly. It's been up in the top 3, often first in a lot of the rankings. And I'm very happy to say that because it was one of the weapons that got all the changes from beta and the disappointing lack of vaulting dance and everything. And I really like what they've done to allow you to benefit from being in the air longer and also doing that charge attack while you're in the air to come down with a descending slash combo. Super cool. The reality of the gameplay that I've seen from speedrunning though is ultimately spamming the descending slash to do the super leap up into the air, emptying out all your essence, then while you're in the air, you fire the wound attack, the focus strike, to refill your essence, landing into a combo, into another charge, descending slash up, and then repeat. This loop I think is really cool, very satisfying, especially with the fact that at launch, they gave the starting part of this an offset. Super cool. Personally, I don't want them to nerf that. I think that's fantastic, but I must admit that there is a lot of power in that specific aspect of the gameplay. So if we're talking again about taking something that's overused and nerfing it a little bit while bringing up other aspects of the weapon, that's something that I could see for Glaive, as it is very clearly overperforming relative to the other weapons, and I see that aspect of it as the most powerful part. But again, I actually don't want them to mess with it. I think it's really fun. Next, I'm actually going to talk about light bowgun, which in some previous ranking videos, it was not doing well, especially in gore magala. It wasn't until our final ranking pre-title update 1 that multiple light bowgun speedrunners challenged themselves to really push the rankings, because they felt that people just weren't running it, not that light bowgun wasn't strong. And that was proven to be the case tenfold. Light bowgun went from like 11th or 12th to 1st on gore magala. It was crazy. And we're watching them basically maximize the best weak zone, which is the wing arm sort of taut claws, with the right element to maximize that, which would be fire. What's happening here, to my understanding, is light bowgun being around that burst step by activating the whole rapid fire mode. You're doing a dash shot, dash shot, dash shot while your gauge is active, spending it, then rebuilding it as fast as possible to do the same thing. Now, light bowgun's gameplay is pretty simplistic, especially when you cut it to its bare bones for maximizing the gameplay like in a speedrun. Mostly it's about minor movement and evasion, while absolutely spamming a basic shot into the right location and then doing that whole burst step concept whenever you can. So light bowgun is performing incredibly as has been shown, and the strongest aspect of it that I understand would be the burst step. Do I think that should be nerfed? No. What I do think is that the light bowgun could do with some more varied gameplay. I look at the heavy bowgun and see that they've got like an offset. They have a shield allowing them to do the clash mechanic. They have the big heavy hits and interesting mechanics around that. Meanwhile, for light bowgun, I see a lot less flair and a lot less interesting stuff. I would love them to improve light bowgun's general kit to be more evasive and mobile and interesting and stand out more from the heavy bowgun. But obviously, the output of the weapon is incredible when used correctly, as we've seen. Next up, one of my main weapons, Charge Blade. It's been up there in the rankings pretty damn consistently. It's doing phenomenally in wilds in general, and a lot of that is thanks to the whole Power X mode, and specifically the ED2 attack. By using the circle combo, you do this element discharge attack, and then you combo it into a second version of that. The second version, ED2, has you swing not once but twice in one button press. That hits with the weapon, that causes a vial pop, and if you hold the button while Power X is going, that's 4 ticks of the chainsaw. But because it swings twice for free, you're actually getting double that. And so that's causing a really repetitive combo. ED1, ED2, and interrupting that with a triangle to sort of reset, then back into ED1, ED2. Now some speedrunners do go into the elemental follow-ups, the AED, and then the new follow-up attack to build up some great KO and more vial pops, specifically the head, and building up paralysis to set up for more free DPS. But it's, used intentionally at the right moment. I would say that the strongest thing that Chargeblade has right now is during Power X mode, ED2. I would like them to encourage amped element discharge, super amped element discharge, and especially that new follow-up attack, and perhaps reduce the relevance of the whole ED1, ED2 reset thing. What would be cool about that is the fact that you can go straight into an amped element discharge without having to combo into it going through ED1, ED2 at all. You can just press triangle and circle together while in your axe mode. This then allows you to go straight into the follow-up and then go into a super amped or go into the super amped after AED if you want. By buffing those aspects of the weapon, you would change the meta and main use of it, and that could be very interesting for what would be best for Chargeblade. So I would find that interesting, and it might also encourage SAD playstyle once again, which by the way isn't even bad, it's just Power X mode is so good it overshadows. Right, the last weapon I want to mention for this kind of thing would be Switch Axe, which is doing very well actually based on the rankings, but obviously the meta gameplay is basically you full release and then you immediately transform back into your sword to full release, then you're forced to do a spiral spin, which is just a quick triangle, then you full release, and then after that you might have to sort your switch gauge quickly, and then you full release, and you full release, and you full release. As much as you physically can, you use one attack over and over. You will interrupt that when you have to by doing an offset or more likely a sword counter. Full release is so overtuned relative to the rest of the weapon that that's what you need to be doing, which is I find quite fun and satisfying, but I play the weapon casually as one of my other main weapons. If it was my main weapon, I'd probably get bored of full release every time. So if they were going to address that, I would hope that they would buff other things like the zero sum element discharge, like the basic sword attack combos, or like we saw in Rise and Sunbreak meta, doing a lot of the transformation attacks, which are really fun and awesome to use. Essentially, they need to bring up the rest of the kit if they're going to bring down full release, that's for sure. And so that's probably just an obvious overview. But yeah, that's actually the ones that I know enough about to comment on my general thoughts on them. Other weapons are doing really well, but do I consider them overpowered in any specific way that needs addressing? Not exactly. For example, Greatsword is doing incredibly, but there's nothing about it that I think is too much. Anyway, all of it's interesting to consider and speculate. I'm just happy that this kind of thing is even on the table. Changing the meta loops and breathing new life into the weapons, it's a great way to get things to feel fresh and encourage gameplay again. This is the type of thing that I would only expect at the launch of a game and its expansion, so this is awesome. So let me know what you guys think. What weapons will they buff or nerf or how? And what do you think about the stuff we talked about? And either way, I hope that talk was interesting, but for now, I've been Hollow, you've been you, and thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.